Hey gang, this is Denise and I'm doing a ball sequence. So what you'll need for this little sequence, which will be about 30 minutes, is an alpha ball and the small yoga tune-up balls. They can be in the tote. There are a couple things we'll use them in a tote, and then you'll use them one by one as well. So please feel free to spend more time than I do in any area that is really your hotspot area. But I'm going to be trying to move through this in real time with you, but as I say, you may need more time on certain things. So to begin with, I'm going to start with untoting a ball and working on my feet. I feel like working on the feet is just something we almost need to do every day. It's okay, I'll get it later. So we're going to start by using some of my favorite techniques on my feet, which are compress and relax. So this helps me kind of touch on many of the areas of my feet that may be tender. And you know, that can change from one day to the next depending on what you've been doing. Maybe you've been doing some hiking, maybe you've been at your standing desk for many hours or something like that. So I'm just pressing and releasing all over the surface of the bottom of my foot and just acquainting myself with some of the resistance and tenderness that might be there. And then after I've done several of these, I'm going to start using my foot actively. So I'm going to squeeze with my toes and spread them out. I'm going to compress and squeeze at the same time and spread them out. So you see, I'm not using this ball to release anything. I'm using the ball to actually help strengthen and improve my foot function. So now I'm going to grip the ball with my short toes and work with my great toe. Can you see how I'm lifting it up and down? If you're new to using the ball like this might be quite hard for you, but I've had a fair bit of practice. It was really hard for me at first, but I did develop a bit more dexterity with my great toe. Now I'm going to switch that up and press down with my great toe and lift my 4 short toes. They look kind of crippled when I do this, but the most important thing here is, can I get my great toe to function independently of the rest of my toes? Okay, so now I'm going to challenge that a little bit more. I'm actually going to bring my toe into its end of extension. Hold it there, that feels like a stretch right now, but now I'm going to push my toe into the ball. See how I'm squishing the ball? And I'm going to do that a few times. This again is really strengthening for my great toe. You can see it's lighting up the arch of my foot too. So I'm pressing and releasing with that a few times. And then I'm going to hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, and relax. Then I'm going to try that with my toes. So I'm going to take them to their end of extension, my next 2 toes, and I'm going to push my toes into the ball, squeeze, 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 and I might turn that off and on a couple of times. I find my toe, you know, the short toes don't have the same responsibility that the great toe has for guiding our foot and leg movement. So I'm pressing those last 2 toes down. This is so tricky. I can feel that in the arch of my foot really strongly. And then I'm going to release. All right, so it's kind of nice to wiggle out the toes after that. Now I'm going to put some shear into the arch of my foot. So it's not just a compression that I'm doing here. So what I'm actually trying to do is get some drag on this tissue under my foot. Can you see how my foot is blanching a little bit? So I've pinned the ball under my foot, and then I'm kind of pulling my foot this way. So I'm getting some blanching and dragging the tissue. When we drag the tissue like that, it's very stimulating for the cells in our connective tissues that secrete a very slippery fluid that helps our tissues slide and glide. And oftentimes when we feel stiff and tight, it's because we're not hydrating our tissues like this. And so this shearing that I'm doing here is really, really helpful for that. It's going to really change the way my foot feels right away. And so I'm going to do that on my lateral arch as well, you see. So we have a smaller arch on the outer edge of the foot. All right, and I might do that under this transverse arch of my foot one time too. So I'm just going to let my foot collapse around it. You can't really get shear on that to the same degree, but oh, that feels really good. Okay, and now I'm going to flush it out with some longitudinal rolling. So just coming up and down a few times. But again, guys, if you really want to spend more time, and I always advocate for spending lots more time even, then please feel free to stop the video for a little bit and continue to work. So now I'm going to work on my other foot. All right, so remember, I want to get to know the surface of this foot. I can't take anything for granted. There could be totally different things going on with this foot. Okay, and I'm just compressing and releasing. And it always sounds funny when I talk about the balls, but my balls are well broken in. So they are maybe squishier than new balls would be. And as you could see, I was using yoga tune-up balls, which were developed by Jill Miller. And she's a genius, and I just really appreciate the kind of grippiness that these balls provide and just the right amount of give. I just think they're just perfect for this work. So after compressing, then I'm going to work with improving my toe function. So I'm spreading out my toes. That toe spread is very, very important to maintain, guys, for good foot function, which affects everything in your body. And then after doing that for several times, I'll hold the ball with my short toes and then start working with my great toe. I want my great toe to be really good at extending, like this position, and flexing down. So it becomes a really good pusher-offer as I'm walking. Up and down, and then I'm gonna hold the ball with my great toe, press it down, and lift my short toes. So the thing I'm really trying to do is just get some independence, my great toe, from the rest of my toes. And then I work with the extension of my great toe. So I take it into its end range extension, and then I'm going to push. So it's better to do that straight on if you can, because you want your great toe pointing straight forward and functioning straight forward as much as possible, as much as you possibly can. Okay, I'm pressing and pressing and pressing and holding now. And then I'll do that with my next two toes. So I'm going to take them to their end range extension, and I'm going to push, 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 push. This is making my toes stronger, strengthening the tissues as well. You might want to turn that off and on a couple of times. And then the last two toes, press, and off and on a couple of times, especially if it's super intense for you. Press, press, press. And then we'll go into doing some shearing now. Wiggle out your toes. And again, we're going into the arch of the foot here, and I'm trying to get, compressing initially, but then trying to get some sideways pressure. You can see my tissue blanch. And then the next area, there is that area right about here that most people are going to feel pretty tender. So don't let that surprise you. It's okay, nothing wrong, but that tissue is subjected to quite a lot of tension. So it can be a little bit sensitive, that's all. And let's go to the other side, and we'll work on the lateral arch. All our arches serve to help the foot be a better spring for us, so that walking is less energetically draining. Okay, working with my transverse arch now. Very nice, and we'll do some longitudinal rolling now. This is a lot more gentle. You could even sit down and do this, but it's kind of a nice flushing stroke. That's how I think of it. Just kind of stirring up the circulation, and that completes our foot series, okay? And now we're going to go into working on the calves. So let's start with the balls in the tote. And we're going to be seated on our mats, or whatever you're seated on at home. It could be on the carpet or something like that. And we're going to just start to do some longitudinal rolling. So I've got my ball in my tote, and I'm just using my hands. I'm just doing some sliding here. Now, if that's just not available to you, you would just have to work in smaller increments. So I'm not lifting my seat at all, and I'm just sort of gently moving forward and back. This would probably be available to most people, but if you're able to lift your seat up and move, If you have the arm strength for that, then you can roll the whole area and it takes less time. So what I'll be doing is rotating my leg. You see I can turn my foot out and get a different aspect, move it straight up, and then move it to the side. And it's all gonna feel very different. Each area feels incredibly different, and there's all kinds of little surprises in there for you. So, you know, up to you how much time you wanna spend. Now, what I would suggest is, you know, the upper half of your calf muscles are where, upper half of your calf, this is where the muscle bulk is. You might want to just sit into the muscle bulk. You could even add extra pressure by putting the other leg, and then you can just rotate the leg from side to side, or you could make circles or write the alphabet or something like that. You see I'm using extra weight here, and just me doing that is going to get some shearing of my muscles over the pressure of this ball. And you might want to change position a couple of times. So now I'm going to just move it up a little bit. And remember, I can get different aspects of my leg by rotating. And I can get different muscles and different sensation by either writing the alphabet with my foot, which is always a good thing to do anyway, very beneficial exercise, or just making circles or flexing and extending like this. Oh, right. Wow, that's pretty intense work. This is very sensitive tissue. So we have to keep that in mind. It's not that there's something wrong there, but there's just a lot of sensory receptors there. Okay, so remember we're doing some longitudinal rolling. If you're unable to lift your seat off the ground, you can do it a little bit at a time, just like this. Just bend and straighten, and rotate the leg from side to side. But if you're able to use your arms, then you can do more just sort of bigger movements, cover a little bit more ground, a little bit faster too. So remember, if you need to, just pause the video, do a little extra work, and then just start it again. Okay, so remember we're rotating. And then if you like, you can put some additional weight on there, and make some circles, flex, extend. If you find writing the alphabet is more interesting, feel free to do that. And make sure you're moving in a couple of different spots. So you don't want to be overworking the same tissue. And to ensure that I'm going to rotate in and out of that position. Very good. Okay, remember, sometimes we want some extra weight, and sometimes even if the sensation's quite a lot, extra pressure sometimes makes it feel better. So it's good to experiment with that. Okay, so that's pretty good for our calf work. So now we're going to use the balls in the toe once again and come onto the shins. So I'm going to show you a couple of techniques for this. So we'll start like this, and I'm just going to use my own body weight to roll up and down. So again, if you need to pad your knee, please do that. And it's up to you how much pressure you want to put in. You just lean into it a little bit more if you need to. See, I can just kind of really sink my body weight onto that shin if I need to. And I think I need to. So I'm going to come up and down as far as I can. Remember, if you want to work in smaller sections, totally fine. And remember that you can also hold the ball still and move your body. Whoo, Nelly, yeah, that works really well. So you're going to find that when you're working your shin, it's mainly this outer aspect where all the tissue is that you want to work. So that's what you're going to be leaning into with your hip. And you can take that little bit by little bit. Lean in and out, in and out. And again, remember, you can spend a lot more time than I am. Feel free to pause the video and try these for a little bit longer. Okay, now I'm going to take that onto the other leg. And a good way to just get to know what's happening is by rolling up and down to see how things feel today. And then you can start your more specific work, just leaning in with your hip and out. We're actually able to get some shear on those muscles by doing this, once again, because we're both compressing and we're getting some sideways direction to our pressure as well. So that is kind of, it feels a little bit like pulling the muscle away from the bone. But for some reason that feels so good, and it is so good. It's very, very stimulating for those cells that create the hydration in our connective tissues and muscles. So let's go longitudinal one more time. And I'm showing you some things, but honestly, it's all about you intuitively moving your body, working with these balls, and just finding ways to address your tissues in whatever way you need. Okay, so now I'm going to take one of these balls out of the tote and do one of my favorite techniques. We're going to get more into the side of the leg now. So working with the ball this way, putting the ball on top, or the ankle on top of the ball, and I'm going to just flex and extend. I can actually put a fair bit of pressure down onto the ball by using my hands like this. And it's actually good to work into all of these bones, even though it's not muscle tissue. Again, it's that connective tissue that needs to be hydrated, making ankle movement so much better. I'm going to start moving up now from my ankle. And now again, I'm going to use my hands to help guide my movement and just press into that. Okay, I like using these small movements here, but of course you could take longer strokes if you want. But personally, I'm going to lean into this and move up and down a few times. Oh boy, that just really gets to it. So we're going to come up a little bit more now, working into those muscles on the side of the lower leg. They used to be called peroneals. Now it's more popular to call them the fibularis muscles. But they're all along the fibula bone. So I'm pressing, I'm adding a little bit of pressure with my hand. Could use two hands. Whew, that's so good. Again, it's great to just pause and flex and extend. This is really effective technique here. And it kind of keeps, showing that this is not passive techniques that we're doing. We're not passively stretching anything. We're actually improving our sensitivity, waking up our sensory receptors, our proprioceptors, and also making sure that our joints are moving well. So it is a fairly active practice, as it turns out. All right, so once you feel like you've addressed that, again, feel free to spend more time. I'm going to go on to the other side. Remember, it's really nice to work around, press your ankle bones into the ball. I'm actually right under my ankle bone, right in front of the joint there, getting the joint a little juicier. And then I'm going to move up a little bit higher. I'm pressing down. Notice how many times I change my body position. It's really important to make sure the rest of your body's comfortable. You don't want to be exhausting your arms or your neck or whatever while you're doing these rolling techniques. So move into advantageous, comfortable positions. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving. I like these little short strokes for this area. Also really like to do the ankle movement for this area. Okay, and now I'm going to take both hands into this, leaning into it. It does seem awkward at first, but after a while, you just need to keep practicing. This is one of those things that, you're not going to be born knowing how to do this. You have to give yourself a chance to practice and experiment. So important. And your tissues really benefit from a regular rolling practice like this. When you first start doing it, it could feel a bit intense. I sort of liken it to, using an electric toothbrush for the first few times. It just feels like, whoa, this is crazy. But after a while, that vibration, even if it's pretty strong, feels like, oh, it's no big deal. It's kind of the same thing here. But the interesting thing for me about rolling like this is, that sensation when I'm rolling seems to be less intense, but when I finish rolling, what is even more surprising is that it gives me better balance and function in my joints. So even though the sensation of the rolling is less, my sensory receptors are more alert and awake and helping me balance and helping me function better. So that's a huge benefit. Okay, so now we've done the side legs. We're going to use the small ball, and we'll go into lateral hip rotators. I'm really working on some of our hot spots today. So if you can feel your big hip bone here, right here, big hip bone, you're going to go just behind it, okay? So get into that. You're actually going to put your body right on top of the ball. I know the ball is probably disappearing into my tissue now. But once I let it sink into my tissue like that, behind that big hip bone, then I'm going to do this waving action. So for some people, you can do the same thing that I'm doing right now on the wall. You can bring the ball to the wall, sink it behind that big hip bone, and just lean your body into the wall. It's a lot less pressure, but you have really good control there. So if that's a really intense area for you and being on the floor like this is just way too much, feel free to try it on the wall, at least for an experiment. So as I keep waving my leg in and out like that, I'm actually changing the position of the ball just a little bit. So I started about here, and now I'm about here. Okay, so I've just kind of worked my way around that big hip bone. That is your greater trochanter, and you have a whole bunch of tendons that attach to that from some really cranky muscles that we often complain about, and that's probably what you're feeling when you're working here. So when we work on the tendons, it actually calms the muscle down quite a lot. So this is why we've started there. So, keep going with it all the way around that bone, and then when you feel like you've done so, you're going to just move a little bit more. So we were working here, now I'm moving here, so not very far away, same neighborhood, and then I'm going to roll up and down like this. So again, you can do this on the wall too, but I'm moving through several layers of muscles. This small ball has pretty, it feels like a kind of pointy pressure. It feels like, somebody's really strong thumb pressing through that tissue. If that's too much for you, feel free to use a larger ball. You could use the alpha ball, which is significantly bigger, but I prefer the small ball for this myself. But we all have our own level of sensation and what we're looking for there. Okay, so we're gonna work on the other side now. Okay, so taking the ball, finding my big bone, gonna work right behind it, and that's just where I begin. So it's good to let your body sink onto the ball for a moment. Do the waving action with your leg. And, after a couple of repetitions of that, then I move the ball just a little bit. It's like half an inch or a centimeter, not even, at a time. And you'll find, even if you move just a little bit, it changes the sensation quite a lot. Because, a tendon, these tendons are not particularly wide. So when you go off of one tendon and onto another, you're on a different muscle, and it's going to have a different level of sensation for sure. And remember, what we're doing here is we're going to improve the sensory, the ability of those sensory receptors to perceive information, but we're also making it so that these tissues slide and glide better, so that movement feels better right away. And that does not interfere with function, like a lot of stretching would eventually interfere with how our hips function. This is making them function better because they're going to have more information and the tissues are going to slide better. So we're not diminishing our function in any way. We're definitely boosting it. Okay, so now I feel like I have worked all the way around. I've worked from this starting position around the large bone. So now I'm going to move in a little bit and roll up and down. Okay, and that is going to feel amazing. Remember, you could be doing the same thing on the wall, and if you find a really hot spot, then I recommend you just sink onto it for a little bit. Just pause in what you're doing, take some deep breaths. It's a good communication with your nervous system that it's okay to relax everything's okay. There might be a lot of sensation, but it's not going to hurt you, okay? So breathing is very important while you're rolling. You want to keep your breath nice and regular, free-flowing. If you find that you're holding your breath, you're probably working either too deep, too aggressively, or you need to get off of whatever you're on. Maybe you're on a nerve or a blood vessel or something that doesn't feel good at all. Okay, so now I've worked thoroughly through all of those lateral hip rotator tissues. Okay, so I'm going to work on one more hot spot. We're taking it all the way up to the back of the skull now. You have the option at this point to use your alpha ball, in which case you could probably just lie straight down. Ooh, forgot about my mic. Let me get that out of there. So you could lie straight down, or you could put a block under your head and use something else. So let me just show you this. So with the block under the occiput, you can see that it gives me space to just do these little tiny movements. So I will begin at the very back, right in the center, and basically I would do little movements like this all the way around to this side, and then I would rotate my head over the ball in a no. So we start with yes, and then we work with no, and then we go and do that on the other side. Now, if you want to, you could do that with the small ball on the block, okay? So that would look a little bit different, not that much though. Oh, excuse me. So putting the small ball on the block, again, you might feel like that's a lot more pressure, and then you're working with the no, or sorry, yes, yes, up and down, eventually working it, so you're going to be turning the head, working up and down, and then you'll work with no, rolling across all of those suboccipitals. Now, if you have not worked this before, or you haven't worked it for a long time, it's going to probably be sensitive. You know, if you've been on the computer a lot, it's probably going to be pretty sensitive, if you can see what I'm doing. So let me just show you one more time with the alpha ball. It looks very similar, so we were going at, and it's also fine to use your hand. I don't want to do that and block your view of what I'm doing, but you can see how I'm going with the yeses, and I'm eventually turning my head, and then I'm going to go with the no. And working that. And then, you know, feel free to stay on any one particular spot if you need to. Just rest into it and take some deep breaths. And then, you know, whenever you feel complete, you'll just move it over to the other side. Okay, working on the no, yes, nods, nodding yes, and then going into the no. I would recommend, you know, you're probably spending 5 to 10 minutes in each of these areas. It is possible to overwork an area, just so you're aware. You're not usually causing all that much damage, but just the same as what would happen if you had, say, a really deep tissue massage after not having massage for a long time. Your body would probably notice that bit more. You might even get a little, maybe slight inflammatory response or something. And you might have the same thing happen here. But usually within 24 to 48 hours, all of that would dissipate and you'd be absolutely fine. But what I would say about that is, you know, you solve that problem by doing the rolling, addressing these tissues a little bit more frequently. Okay, so that's our series for today. Of course, we haven't touched the whole body, and it's not possible to do that in a 30-minute sequence. So I'll be adding lots more sequences, and yeah, this is just sort of what we're doing today. All right, I encourage you to get on the ball again as soon as you can. It's always good for you, very down-regulating for the nervous system. It's going to help you sleep. helps address your tissues and helps improve function actually and improve the hydration of your tissues. So many bangs for your buck there, and hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. All right, bye for now, guys.